Fenton as secretary for the planning board.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations for secretary? I have a nomination that's seconded to elect Michael Fenton as secretary of the planning board. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Congratulations, Michael. Could I have order, please? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. First one is are the minutes of the April 10th regular meeting.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve these minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are accepted. Next.
Sir, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry, is that better?
They seem a little low tonight.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I will do my best to be heard. Next is are the minutes of the special meeting on May 1st for an orientation session of the members of the planning board. May I have a motion to accept these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for to accept these minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are accepted. Next are the minutes of the special meeting on May 1st, a public workshop to discuss an incentive program to promote preservation of historic buildings and resources. May I have a motion to accept these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are accepted. Lastly, I have the minutes of a site visit meeting on May 3rd to visit the Goldstein site and the Shelton site. May I have a motion to accept these minutes?
So moved. So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to accept these minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Minutes are accepted. Next item is item 3, correspondence. I have one correspondence from Stephen Fagan and Robert Novich dated May 6, 2019, with attachment. May I have a motion to receive this correspondence?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to receive this correspondence. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Correspondence is received. Next item, we'll discuss continuances. I expect there will be 2 items continued this evening. Item 5B, a public hearing on Prospect Avenue subdivision, Eugene Goldstein applicant. Request for combined preliminary and final plan approval for a proposed 8-lot major subdivision of property fronting on Prospect Avenue. The property is identified as Assessors Plat 121 NW Lot 66A and is located approximately 0.3 miles to the east of the intersection of Prospect Avenue and Aquidneck Avenue. Is anyone speaking for this? Oh, we have 2. Mr. Silva, glad to see you feeling better.
Thank you. We're getting there, and I am not contagious. I'm on more antibiotics than you can believe. Thank you very much. Mr. Martin asked me to just address the board and indicate it could be a continuance at the board's discretion after the site visit.
Very good.
But,
Well,
he doesn't have one of his experts prepared to appear, so if you want to put it over to, is it
the June
12th?
the June 12th meeting?
That would be fine.
Very good.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to continue this item to the June 12th meeting?
Motion to continue. Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this item to the June 2nd meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The other item that will likely be continued is item 5C, a public hearing, request of Brennan Realty LLC, Bernadette Realty LLC, and Mark Byrne Realty LLC for preliminary plan approval, including requests for waivers from certain provisions of the subdivision and land development regulations for a proposed 11-lot major subdivision of property fronting on Mitchell's Lane. The property is identified as 430 Mitchell's Lane, Assessors Plat 124, lots 13, 14, 14A, and 15, and is located approximately 1,300 feet to the north of the intersection of Mitchell's Lane and Fayette Lane. Mr. Silva.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I represent Mr. Brennan and his various family corporations. This matter's been in the process, in the queue, if you will, and it's now at a point where it's prepared to go forward with the public hearing. There's been a significant amount of concern about it, and I have a number of witnesses that will be presented to the board to support the application. I had been working with Mr. Wolanski in the past, suggesting that this is the kind of hearing that perhaps ought to be put on a special night so as not to, back up a regularly scheduled meeting. It would take up a good portion of an evening, if not the entire evening, and I had asked Ron to reach out to the board to find out if there was a potential of a special hearing date, and he suggested that it might be possible for the week before the 12th, namely the 5th.
Yes.
And I would make a request, if that's possible to be done, I'd ask that the board consider that.
Mr. Wolanski polled the members of the board, and we decided that we could hold a meeting on June 5th at 6 p.m. for the purpose of hearing this application.
That'll be fine.
But we need to make a motion
Yep.
to continue this item to a special meeting on June 5th. May I have such a motion?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to continue this item to a special meeting on June 5th at 6 p.m. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes.
Thank you for the consideration.
Now I'm going to move some things around on the agenda to get some items that should go fairly quickly, move them up and get them out of the way. The first thing I would like to move up is item 6A. Item 6A is a consideration of possible site visits for pending applications. My understanding is that there are two applications that are coming to the agenda at our next meeting, and both are likely to require site visits. And what we would like to do is have those site visits scheduled before next meeting so that we can hear the application at the next meeting. So if that's okay with the board, I'd like a motion to have the planning department set up site visits for these two pending applications before the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to have site visits for two pending applications before the regular meeting on June 12th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. I would like to move item 6C to the next position on the agenda. Review the town's 2018 Community Development Block Grant application for consistency with the Middletown Comprehensive Community Plan. Is there anyone to speak on this item? By the way, before you start, I want to make clear to the board and the people in the audience that this was approved by the town council at their Monday meeting. The purpose of this coming before the planning board at this point in time is so the planning board can evaluate its consistency with the comprehensive plan. That is all we are required to do.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kochi. My name is Sean Saunders. I work with Church Community Housing. We administer the Community Development Block Grant on behalf of the town of Middletown. As Mr. Kochi said, this is a very low level of review. It's essentially, and I have the language here, there's a certification as part of the application That states the planning board certifies that, to the best of its knowledge, the activities proposed are not in conflict with the general policies set forth in the comprehensive community plan of the town of Middletown, which I can pass up if anyone would like to review as well.
We have a listing of the community, the block grant items.
Oh, yes, okay, perfect. And that is the priority list that the city has voted on and approved.
Are there any questions? May I have a motion stating that the planning board feels the community block grant requests are consistent with the comprehensive plan?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes.
Thank you very much.
The next item that I would like to move up is item 6B, public hearing, request of Green Construction Incorporated for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, for proposed renovation of an existing commercial building located at 850 Aquidneck Avenue, Assessors Plat 114, Lot 92C.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself.
Okay, make sure you fill out the form. Is there someone to speak on this item? Please.
Good evening. Our intent is to essentially improve our asset by removing the
I'm sorry,
wood.
could you
clapboard.
say your name first?
I'm sorry, it's Ken Brennan. Thank you. So as I was about to say, we're looking to replace the clapboard with a hardy plank material, which is a far superior product, and it doesn't rot like the condition that we currently have right now in the building.
Did you bring samples?
Yes, sir.
We've dealt with hardy board before. Any questions that anyone would like to ask? May I have a motion to grant this? Actually, before I do that, I need a motion to open a public hearing. This is a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is open. Now you can, if you can briefly restate your application.
Sure. It's Ken Brennan, and I'm here to propose us changing the existing wood clapboard on the building to hardy plank, which is a far superior product that will last a lot longer and look a lot nicer.
I'm assuming the hardy board, which, as I said, we've dealt with before, is similar in appearance to what is on the building now?
Yes, absolutely it is.
Are you replacing all of it or just a portion of it?
Yes, we are, all of it.
All of it?
Mhm.
So the building afterwards would be consistent all around?
Correct. It'll have a brand-new look.
Okay. Any questions?
All four sides?
Yes, sir.
Are there currently shingles on one of them, or white cedar shingles?
Right now, currently, I know in the front elevation, it's hardy plank, excuse me, it's clapboard, wood clapboard. I don't believe the backside is cedar shingles.
At any rate, everything will be replaced with the hardy board?
Yes, it's for a consistent look.
Other questions? Anyone from the public like to speak on this item? May I have a motion? Oh, please.
Anto Viveras, 110 Indian Hill Road. I know the design standards was passed for a reason, and my only request is that if the material that they plan to use it blends in with the surrounding areas, that's fine, because you have new materials, it stands up to the weather better, as long as it looks the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who wish to speak? May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. The public hearing is closed. May I have a motion to grant the waiver?
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and seconded to grant this waiver. Is there any discussion?
Just that I'll add to the motion that I believe they've met the standards necessary for approval.
Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the application of Stephen Shelton, Sandra Gowett, and Virginia Traherne Thomas for preliminary plan approval of a two-lot minor subdivision of land located at 535 and 527 Tuckerman Avenue, Plat 122, lots 129 and 144.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I'm going to be recusing myself from advising the board on this. Ms. Desitel will be advising.
Okay, and Mr. Pirritt can return. I don't know where he went, but...
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. I thought Mr. Bouchard had touched base with the planning office. There's a very short matter dealing with Napa, which all the parties are here. It's just to show the reconstruction of the design. You might want to consider maybe doing that rather than
We're
let...
familiar with what the application is seeking. If you are willing to let me move that
Yes.
one before,
Yeah,
I will gladly do that.
Yeah, because we're going to take up most of the night, if not all the night.
Okay, so we'll hold off on item 5A, and we will move to item 5D and 5E. These are two separate items. We will consider them both at the same time for discussion, but we will vote on them separately.
Make a
Item...
motion to open the public hearing.
Hold on a second. Item 5D, public hearing, development plan review for an application of SKN Associates LLC, Napa. Proposed development of a 4,900 square foot addition to an existing commercial building located, including requests for waivers from certain design standards of the Middletown Rules and Regulations regarding the subdivision and development of land, Section 521, for property at 15 Valley Road and identified as tax assessors Lot 35 on Plat 107NE. Item 5E is a request of the Zoning Board of a review, excuse me, for recommendation on an application of SKN Associates LLC for a special use permit to construct a 4,900 square foot addition to an existing commercial building located in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District property located at 15 Valley Road and identified as tax assessors Lot 35 on Plat 107NE. May I have a vote to open the a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to open a public hearing. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The public hearing is open.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Sean Bouchard. I'm an attorney from Silva, Thomas, Martland, and Offenburg here this evening representing the applicant, SKN Associates. If you recall, we were here before the board at the April 10th meeting in connection with this matter. I did have Mike Russell with me, the engineer, who provided a complete review of the engineering aspects of this proposal. At the time we concluded that discussion, it was deemed that there were no further questions related to the engineering aspects, but there were concerns related to the architectural design of the building itself. As a way of just covering all our bases here, and as a refresher, this is the Napa Auto Parts store that currently exists on 15 Valley Road. The proposal is to put an addition to the rear of the building, which currently, for those of you familiar with the site, is the spot for multiple containers currently. So in the process of extending the building in that direction, The elevations you were provided were not done in color, and it was a little unclear as to what this building was going to look like on site. I'm joined this evening by Spencer McComb from Cordston Design Architecture, who put together renderings of our revised building, which has a different paint job to try and soften the appearance, as well as slight architectural additions to try and break up the facade, which I know was something that the board had requested. So with that, I would ask that Spencer just come forward and provide a quick rundown of what we've altered and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Good evening. So as you're familiar, it is a warehouse, and we're making the warehouse longer. We know the standards are out there. This building was built before the standards were in place. Obviously, they were in place for the addition. So we took a hard look at what we could do. Obviously, everything we do has a price tag to it, so we had to kind of jockey that with the budget for the overall job, and also with Napa has certain standards that they want to see on their buildings throughout the nation. So there's a little bit of back and forth. So we came up with a solution to be in the spirit of what the standards have for breaking up the facade. This building is essentially on the property line. So anything coming forward away from the building in a depth way would be actually beyond the property line itself. So made it even more tricky to make the building differentiate along that long facade that is now to the street. So the things that we did were highlight that corner, which is how you approach the building, it's how you see the building, and sort of give it an element with a gable, a cross gable actually, that you can see.
So you're talking about this one, is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. And so that cross gable sort of sets the tone away from just the unending flat warehouse style. That would then break up the vertical aspect of it, just adding some scale and detail as the building sort of marched along. This would be done out of a hardy board type product. It would be hardy board panels. We'd have a window here and asphalt roof on the cross gable that you see at the corner there. We looked at different color schemes and different aspects and felt that this was the one that was most appropriate, taking the Napa blue at the top and running it as the main colors that drop down at each of those panel bays that would run along the side of the building. I don't know if you have any further questions.
Any
That's
questions?
a general overview of where we are.
Questions?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
So the tower, it will be all clapboard or hardy plank?
Actually, it'll be panels. So it'll be like a panel building. So raised panels, and then it'll be the inside, the blue areas will be flat, and then there'll be flat panels on the outside, creating a panel look.
Okay. And
Not clapboards in the middle of it.
is that at the tower and at each of the 4 stations?
It's not, the tower happens just at the corner, and then the panels that run down the building have just a small cornice line to add it to the top of them that breaks the flat of what is the 18-foot existing building.
So that it's a grid system, if you will, that's going to be applied?
That's
Those
right.
grids.
It will be applied to the building because we literally don't have even inches to make it thicker toward the street.
So I have one more comment.
Go ahead, Bill.
So it's better, and I'm almost there. If we're going to go with that design, the side of the building where the main entrance is,
That's right.
that to me looks like it's missing a grid system. So you follow me on the left side where the main entrance is now?
Sure.
Coming from that way, I think it's missing. It almost looks like it's missing something to me. I'd like to see you extend that grid system to the corner to kind of balance it.
The far corner?
Yes.
So in the middle is going to be a vestibule that pops forward. You can see it right here. That vertically pops forward.
When you go over there, please take the microphone.
Sure. Anyway, that does pop forward, so that will add some contrast to the outside. Currently now, the doors are flush with the edge of the building. So this will be a forward vestibule that'll be glass enclosed.
Is that an addition?
It is additional.
So that's not on the plan, though?
It is on the plan.
Can you see it?
It is on
I don't think it shows.
the front.
Okay, so whether it's on the plan or not, to me, it isn't significant, but the facade itself, I guess, to me, looks blank. So I would suggest that you replicate the grid system that you have on the, I guess, the right side of the building, the 4 panels. Replicate that on the left side, or the entrance on the corner with the design, same design, just on the facade. To me, it looks like it's not balanced. That's just my personal opinion. I defer to the rest of the board, but that's how I feel personally.
BJ?
Yes, I like what you've done with the color, and I like the design, and I agree with Bill. It would be nice to extend it over to where you have the entranceway.
All right,
But
so,
I like what you've done.
thank you.
Is that something that the applicant is willing to entertain?
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
I guess the only other question that I would have for the board then, can we go back to the pictures of the building?
The previous pictures?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just want to, we can pull it up on the screen. If you could just scroll up one. So this was the initial proposal, right, which was what we were hoping to do, soften the look, right, in terms of the colors. We were requested to change the facade, right, and again, that was in connection with the waiver and facing the street. I think there's a little question as to, you know, that addition price-wise. I don't know what the costs are going to be in terms of that paneling system, right? We're already kind of at the top of a price range here when it comes to trying to incorporate these additions to, you know, further reduce the impact of the visuals of the building, right? I'm a little hesitant to say one way or the other without being able to run that pricing as to whether we can incorporate additional architecturals around the rear of the building when it comes to, you know, facing the street.
No one's asking about going around to the rear. I think they're just talking about the front side. Just the front side.
Right.
Just
Okay.
that.
One additional grid system replicating what you have on the, I guess, the front of the building. I mean, it's likely an AZAC product.
So I guess at that point, if you want to make that a condition of your approval and pass that on, I think that's something we'd be willing to entertain going forward.
Okay?
Thank you.
Other comments? Other comments?
I got a
Michael?
question. So I'm looking at at this picture here, and I want to make sure I know what the materials are that you're using. So the original building looks like it's like all metal type of
Corrugated,
facade.
yeah, corrugated vertical metal paneling.
Okay. And you're going to put that board over some of it? It's going to cover certain parts? Because you have like a double color here now, you know, two
Yes,
colors.
so it's going to be a panel system. Hardy makes a panel. They make Hardy board. They make panels as well. So that goes on the back, and then it'll be trimmed out, like you'd see in a Victorian house at somewhat level. And that panel system is the white that you see framing the blue.
That's a metal product as well, right? That's a metal.
Nope, that's Hardy board. That
Hardy
panel,
board.
that
Cement
panel
board essentially.
within the panel systems, the new areas, that's all Hardy board paneling.
Okay, so and everything gets repainted with this.
Painted.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
it's painted.
And that the batten type material, is that also kind of an AZAC or a Hardy board as well?
It's Hardy board, so it's dimensional. Looks like trim.
Okay.
It's just, you know, lasts a lot longer from a paint standpoint.
The simulated windows, what is that? What's that?
It's going to be a vinyl window that we'll put up there, and we'll put a black backing on the back of it but it doesn't go to anywhere, but it's showing that, the look of it. So it'll be 2 vinyl windows that'll be up in the top. There'll be divided light.
Vinyl, huh? Vinyl?
Yep.
Okay,
And they'll have a blackout on the back.
okay. Thank you.
Rita, could you put that one back up again? To say thank you for being responsive to the suggestions of the planning board. I personally think you did a good job with this design, and if we add the condition of putting another grid section on the end, just on the front wall, I think we've done a good job, and I appreciate the responsiveness. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment? May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Oh. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Did I hear that?
Name,
Anton Waivers,
Thank
110
you.
Indian Hill Road.
yeah.
Did I hear him right? It's going to be right on the property line? This building is going to be on the property line?
It's currently,
It is, it's there already.
It's on the property line, all set?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's there now.
And my other concern really is the being in the watershed area. And
We're going to move to that item after we hear the public comments on the first item.
okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public looking at item 5D? Any discussion on item 5E? This is the item that refers to the building being located in Zone 1.
We had testimony last month on this, and my recollection is we were all satisfied that they met the standards based on the memo with the conditions spelled out, so I would support that also.
Any further discussion from the board? Any comments from the public?
Antone, now's the time.
Anton Rivera's 110 Indian Hill Road. In many of the subdivisions and additions, usually required approval by the local Board of Area Planning Commission and a detailed drainage and water management plan for the proposed development is often part of the approval process. Was it submitted?
I believe so. I believe everything has been properly submitted and reviewed.
Okay. And another problem, in most cases, a drainage plan for the site itself is all that is considered, rather than how the development affects the entire watershed. In order to protect streams and watersheds, a broader approach is needed. How would this affect what's there now? How much would it add to it?
Well, we heard a lot of testimony at the last meeting. Yeah. Come on up to the microphone.
Yeah, so again, this is kind of the second half of a meeting. This was presented fully in front of the planning board back at the April 10th meeting. Michael Russell, professional engineer, was here to provide testimony related to the drainage plan. The drainage plan was provided. In addition to that, it went through full technical review committee review and approval. There was no alteration. We did receive DEM approval in connection with this. There is no increased runoff related to the extension of this building. And to provide further insight, for those of you who are familiar with the site, that area is currently paved with containers on site. So by putting a building over it, there's actually no increase in terms of the impervious surface that we're creating. As part of the condition from the Technical Review Committee, we are going to re-till the bottom of the existing stormwater basin in order to increase the rate of infiltration that can happen. But there is no impact when it comes to that, and we did receive testimony from Michael Russell in connection with that at the past hearing.
And I might add that after the testimony at the last meeting, the applicant asked whether the planning board needed the engineer to attend tonight's meeting, and we told him we did not require his attendance. We were satisfied with the plan he put forth.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. For the planning board, any discussion on item 5D?
It's the one we're going to add.
May I have a motion for a favorable recommendation?
So moved.
Mr. Chair, in addition to the 2 recommended conditions of approval for this item, I would also like to request that a 3rd condition be added, that updated elevations that depict this latest
Oh, yes,
plan
absolutely.
are...
No, once you add the additional panels, so they will be as built.
After it's done? No, we want them...
No, it'll show it as will be
Can
built.
we just make it simple? The condition of approval is to add a similar style grid system to the front of the building, like we discussed.
The north elevation.
The north-
South elevation.
Oh, okay, so south elevation. Make that just condition number 3, and then however else we get the plans, I think we should have those for the file, I would think, prior to.
Yeah, so in addition to the renderings being updated to show the paneling, an additional elevation that shows the details of the structure would also need to match that and be submitted to the planning
Yes,
department.
yes.
So 2 new documents.
Yes.
So do you have that condition as laid out the way we think it should be?
May I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. May I have a motion on item 5E for a favorable recommendation?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded for a favorable recommendation. Is there any further discussion?
Just to be clear, I support this application because it meets the standards as laid out in the memo dated April 1st by Ron. It meets all of the conditions as stated, and for that reason, I think it's appropriate that we approve this.
Any other comments from the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion passes. And again, thanks for being responsive
Yes,
to
thank you.
our request.
Thank you for allowing us to go first.
Thank you.
The next item will be item 5A, application of Stephen Shelton, Sandra Gowett, and Virginia Traherne Thomas for preliminary plan approval of a 2-lot minor subdivision of land located at 535 and 527 Tuckerman Avenue, plats 122, lots 129 and 144. By the way, this is not a public hearing, but I will allow the public to comment at a later time. Mr. Silva.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Robert M. Silva, a member of the firm of Silva, Thomas, Motlin, and Offenberg, Ltd. And my office has been involved with this particular piece of property, 535 and now 529 Tuckerman Avenue, for a better part of a year and a half or so. It's a request that the planning board consider a simple subdivision of an existing lot which has a single-family house on it already. The original application was submitted by Mr. Sheldon himself and his wife, and it contained the land area of an existing lot on which his existing home is built. As we went through the technical review process, it became evident that it might make sense to expand the area in question, to increase the lot size. And there was an agreement in existence for quite some time between Mr. Sheldon and Mrs. Virginia Trahan Thompson, who is the abutter right next door, that she would make available, if Mr. Sheldon requested, additional land to add to his lot. And that was the result of some negotiations between the two parties, and it came to fruition. Another 10,000 square feet of property was added to the original Sheldon lot, and we changed the application because now there's a part of property that belongs to somebody other than Mr. Sheldon. It also belongs to Mrs. Virginia Trahan Thomas. So if you would look to the monitor, you can see there's a stretch of property below to the south of the existing house, which is actually being added to the property itself. And the proposal is a simple subdivision of sorts, and it takes one lot and it divides it into two. Doesn't do anything with the need to adjust or increase or renovate the existing house. That stays exactly where it is. But the subdivision that is being requested is the portion of the property that is between the existing house and Tuckerman Avenue. It ends up, a line will be put into the subdivision in a northerly, southerly direction, and the new lot would be to the front and facing onto Tuckerman Avenue. If you look at this overhead aerial, which has been taken, we have superimposed, for purposes of identifying where the proposed new house would be. That's contained on the aerial photo in gray, which marks the house itself and the supporting garage. So that's where a house would be built in the event of a subdivision. Under your zoning laws, under section 702, you're only allowed to have a single primary dwelling on a single lot. Now, taken together, gross area with the combination of the 10,000 square feet from Virginia Trahan Thomas and the existing lot owned by Mr. Sheldon and his wife, the total gross area is in excess of 64,000 square feet. That would be the size of the area that we would be presenting to the planning board, asking that there be a subdivision of that gross area. The area that is going to be the second lot, well, resulting from the subdivision, is the back portion where the existing house is located. That facility is accessed right now, will continue to be, by a driveway that comes from the main house and goes right out to Tuckerman Avenue. The proposal that's been submitted to you and prepared by the engineering firm of Northeast Engineering, Lynn Smallers, our resident engineer who's here with me tonight to describe all the engineering aspects. That house will continue to be accessed by the driveway that exists, and there will be an easement affected across the proposed new lot so that the access to the existing house will remain the same as it is, and that there will be no frontage, if you will, on Tuckerman Avenue for the existing house and the lot in the rear. As to frontage, this is a non-conforming lot in 1 degree. That is, the frontage that's existed on this parcel has always been 120 feet on Tuckerman Avenue. And this is a zone R30, and in the zoning ordinance, any lot in an R30 zone is required to have 130 feet of frontage on a street, in this instance, Tuckerman Avenue. That's never been the case in the history of this lot. This lot has only had 120 feet of frontage, so in that regard, the lot is non-conforming. If this board were to grant the subdivision, it could not grant it on a final basis, because we would be creating a lot in the rear with no frontage, access by a 50-foot right-of-way, and the front lot would still only have 120 feet of frontage, which would be 10 feet less than is required. So the nonconformity as far as street frontage doesn't go away, and it would require us to go to the zoning board of review. In the event the subdivision were approved, it would only be approved conditionally, subject to us going to the zoning board of review and getting regulatory relief to allow a new lot to be created in the rear with no frontage, and the front lot to remain in the front with less than 130 feet of frontage. So we would need technical variance relief in that regard from the zoning board. We have not filed anything with the zoning board at this point. We've shown the plans to Mr. Kane, the zoning officer, and he's reviewing the degree of the relief that would be necessary. So we're here before you tonight on what I consider to be a basic subdivision of an existing lot into 2 lots. And I might add that in the past, I've had experience before the planning board and the zoning board allowing such a configuration where a second rear lot doesn't have any frontage, but is a guaranteed access, both utility-wise and access-wise, through an easement, which is perpetual and will run with the land. That's been done on occasion, a number of occasions, I might add, throughout the town, but it does require relief from the zoning board, and the zoning board has, on a number of occasions, granted that kind of configuration, and we would hope that upon being given favorable advisory conditional approval by this board, we would go back to the zoning board and ask for that relief. Technical Review Committee that understands and acknowledges that such a requirement is necessary. The advisory opinion from the Technical Review Committee took quite a bit of time to come about. I can honestly say, based on my experience of 52 years, I have never had to go through a technical review process as lengthy and as detailed as this, because normally speaking, regarded properly, and you get an advisory opinion. In this instance, as I'm sure you're aware, it's no secret, the neighborhood is concerned. The direct abutter, who's represented by my colleague, Matt Lees, has participated throughout the entire process. So we have gone through a strenuous, arduous, and in my view, very, very complete and thorough technical review process. And that ended up with the town's engineer, Crossman Engineering, sitting in on all the technical review hearings, making comments on the plan that was originally presented and every iteration and revision of the plan thereafter, and there were many. And those revisions and iterations, in large measure, resulted from the comments and the suggestions of Stephen Cabral, who's with Crossman Engineering. And the process took a while, but we are here before you tonight, having attended to every required or suggested or recommended modification to the site plan from an engineering perspective. And after a very prolonged and arduous process at the Technical Review Committee, finally, on March 26, the committee met and considered all the final revisions and voted 3-0 with one abstention. The zoning officer, Mr. Kane, who I understood felt that he'll have to be dealing with the zoning end of this at a later time, and he chose not to make his position known or vote. So the Technical Review Committee, I guess you could say unanimously, 3-0, approved in an advisory fashion a favorable recommendation, saying plans are rather complete and very appropriate, and we have no difficulty whatsoever saying to the planning board that we will be more than happy to abide by those conditions suggested by the Technical Review Committee, and we would have no difficulty or objection having those conditions made a part of the board's conditional approval. And the interesting issue is that that written decision of March 26th, you should have in your packet. It was presented by Mr. Orlando. Example, one further nonconformity that I didn't reference, and that's the house that was built and exists now. Apparently, it is built in such a way that it doesn't meet the full side yard setback. So it's non-conforming in that regard. We don't intend to make any change to that. The house will remain the way it is. We're not going to further encroach on any setbacks. The proposed lot and the proposed dwelling for that lot is also a subject that was discussed in the Technical Review Committee. Ordinarily, you never get into the issue of, well, what kind of a house is it going to be, because it's allowed as a permitted use in an R30 zone. Where is it going to be located? What is it going to look like, and how large will the footprint be? That's something that usually doesn't occur until you get down into the process and you want to approach the building inspector, zoning officer, and say, I want to pull a permit for this. And you don't get a permit to construct until there's a full review by the town's engineer, in this instance Warren Hall, and possibly Crossman if need be, to review the impact for water runoff design and drainage design. You are not, under the zoning ordinance in Middletown, allowed to build anything without being able to demonstrate clearly and irrefutably that what you're going to build on an existing lot doesn't change things in an adverse fashion to either the neighbors on either side or below or above, and certainly keeps within the water runoff and stormwater regulations. And it's at that time that your engineer will go through an analysis as to what you're building and what the impact is going to be on that build, and how are you going to deal with the runoff. Because Middletown's ordinances do not allow you, when you put up a permitted use, a house, still does not allow you to do anything that would increase the rate of runoff from your lot to any other lot, or to otherwise create issues under the stormwater regulations. That's usually done at the end. But because of the demonstrable concern about building a house in this location, the Technical Review Committee suggested that we go forward and advance that dialogue and actually make, as a part of the technical review, information and design with respect to where this house is going to be, how is it going to affect the area, and actually bring in those plans and design for the system that will take care of the runoff from the house, which doesn't exist, and the garage that doesn't exist, and how it will deal with that in such a fashion that it doesn't have a negative impact on the surrounding neighborhood. We did that. Significant expense, and it's usually only done if you're going to build a house. But we did that, and we actually designed on the footprint of the plan itself, and it does show on the overhead aerial that is where the house will be located. It will have 3,674 square feet of cover. That's the footprint for the house and the garage. And you have to then design a drainage system that will take the runoff from a house and a garage that is 3,674 feet and located in that position. Those calculations and water runoff of the area with possible rain gardens or other features to contain and deal with the runoff and direct it in such a fashion that it goes down that very long, narrow portion of the new lot right to the coastal feature. So all the runoff from the house, as proposed, will in fact be directed away from the abutter to the north, and that's Mr. Schufer, who's Matt's client, and his house, you'll notice, is located directly above. It's the one with the swimming pool in it. And we wanted to make sure that whatever we did, we didn't affect that property or that neighbor. The design was submitted for the water runoff and drainage areas to the Technical Review Committee, and Crossman Engineering reviewed it and approved it. So I think I can say without fear of contradiction that we're here before you tonight on what I honestly consider to be a garden variety, simple two-lot subdivision from one lot that's going through a tremendous amount of scrutiny to this point, engineering-wise, and has received the approval of the Technical Review Committee. We are willing to live by all the standards set forth as conditions by the Technical Review Committee, and also we're prepared to limit the structure to be built to that exact location, that exact size, with that exact drainage calculation and design to support that house. So what remains for this board to decide is, under your rules and your regulations, I like to call them the rules of the road, do we meet all the standards that are out there for a planning board to allow for a subdivision of a larger lot into a smaller lot? The fact of the matter is, I described to you a new lot combined to have something in excess of 63 or 64,000 square feet in an R30 zone, where the zone requires that you have 130 feet of frontage on a lot, which we don't, still going to be the 120, no more, no less. And it also requires 30,000 square feet of buildable, developable land. In that regard, we're in the process of addressing a concern expressed by the zoning director, the building inspector, zoning officer, Mr. Kane, that he was not too sure whether our plan as presented, he hadn't made the calculation yet, does it have 30,000 square feet remaining in each lot, which would meet the zoning code. We believe it does. Lynn Small, who's appeared before you and will asked to be qualified as an engineer in the state of Rhode Island, capable of reviewing documents, designing documents, plans, and bringing them to the board's attention, she has staked her credibility and her license on the fact that her design, which excludes the huge coastal feature. I wasn't with you, I was in bed sick, but you were kind enough to do the site walk, and I'm sure you're impressed by the location and impressed by the fact that right down to the southerlymost portion is a huge area of bedrock which is on the shore. And Lynn Small took it upon herself before presenting the plan incorporating both of these land areas, the Virginia Trahan Thomas property and the Sheldon property. She engaged the services of Scott Rabideau, who's a qualified and an experienced environmental scientist, and asked him to go out there and actually identify and flag the, quote, coastal feature, which he did, and that's on your site plan. The flags, I believe, when you walked the site, you should have seen them. They were still there. So she excluded all of the property that she considered and Scott Rabideau considered to be the coastal feature, because the language in your zoning ordinance excludes the coastal features, and those are not allowed to be counted as developable land. So she did that, and she came up with a plan, which is before you, that despite excluding the actual coastal feature, there is more than 30,000 square feet of developable land, in Lynn's opinion, for both these lots. Now, the issue was raised, however, during the technical review process about whether or not Lynn's plan accurately reflected the necessary developable land area for both lots and the design. And that was something that was raised by the butter to the north, Mr. Schufer, and his attorney, and they brought to the Technical Review Committee their position that language in the ordinance of floodway of a stream or floodplain of any body of water as calculated on the basis of a 100-year frequency storm, that should, in addition, be excluded. That was discussed at the technical review process. The zoning officer, Mr. Kane, who has to make that decision, clearly took the position that that wasn't, he wouldn't agree with that area did not have to be excluded. As a matter of practice, never been excluded on a coastal feature, only inland where you have like the Maidford River and Bailey Brook and areas that flood like that, that gets excluded, if you will, from the calculation of developable land. So he was satisfied that he didn't have to have that removed, that area removed on a floodway of a stream and flood, and Lynn's plan does not remove that. Also, there was consideration that presently, because in the past, even before Mr. Sheldon bought his property, and even before Mr. Schufer bought his property, which was owned by Jeffrey O'Regan and Tricia Lang, on Tuckerman Avenue, there's always been a difficult drainage situation that occurs after every rain event. And there would be a lot of flooding and a lot of erosion. And the town back then, and I happen to have been representing Mr. O'Regan at the time and Ms. Lang, offered to have Warren Hall come in and take a look with Tommy O'Loughlin at the situation to see if something could be done. And the net result was that Warren designed a system which would collect lines, take all that runoff, and prevent it from going haphazardly onto the two properties in question here, and put all of that runoff in a controlled fashion through a underground drain designed by Warren and installed by the town with catch basins, etc. And that was done. Mr. Sheldon granted permission to the town to come into his driveway, which will be that 50-foot easement leading to the house, rip it up, and put in all this drainage infrastructure so the water could be gathered off of Tuckerman Avenue to alleviate that situation. That exists. That was done. The town was cordial enough to agree that it ripped up the driveway, it put the driveway back, which it did. So if you go out there and you take a look, you don't see this. But right under that driveway is a system designed by Warren Hall and installed by the town to alleviate existing flooding. Mr. Lees took the position that that's a public utility of sorts. And as such, if you describe it as a public utilities are excluded from the calculation of developable lot area. That was raised at the technical review process and the zoning grid of water on Tuckerman Avenue, and it's not an actual public utility system. So he said he would not decline, and he was not inclined and wouldn't, in fact, exclude that entire driveway area as undevelopable land, further reducing the amount of buildable land on the two lots. So with those two positions taken by the zoning officer, the only thing remained was the objection raised by the neighbor that, wait a minute, in addition to the coastal feature, your ordinance requires you to make further deductions of the land area that is adjacent to a coastal feature. And under the language in our ordinance, it is read as follows. Developable land excludes cliffs, ledges, and bluffs as a feature, so you don't count them, and we didn't. And then there's another subsection that says, and all directly associated contiguous areas to the cliff, ledge, or bluff, which are necessary to preserve the integrity of such features. When we asked Scott Rabideau to flag the feature and look at the condition of that area of the lot, it was his opinion that there was...
May I object? I don't normally object to an opening statement, but as far as I can see, Scott Rabideau isn't here tonight, and I would like an opportunity to cross-examine him on his opinion, and I would not like Mr. Silva to be able to read his opinion into the record without...
I'm not intending to do that, nor am I intending to have Scott Rabideau here tonight, and I'll explain why. But in any event, it's his opinion, and we will proffer that opinion before the Zoning Board of Review for the benefit of the zoning officer, that there are no contiguous areas that are necessary to preserve.
May I get a ruling on the objection? I don't think it's appropriate.
Could we get a ruling?
Can you hear me? Yes, I would sustain that objection. I think that if you're going to introduce expert testimony, you should allow the public an opportunity to question that witness.
It is sustained.
What is the nature of the objection? That what can or I can't do?
It's hearsay. It's hearsay. You can't just recite
Well,
someone's opinion. I need to have an opportunity to cross-examine.
for openers, Matt, case law in Rhode Island is very clear. Statement of counsel, as I've just been doing for the past 25 minutes, is not evidence. Can't be considered evidence.
It seems that you're trying to introduce someone else's opinion, that's all. So I
Well,
object.
by way of explanation, because my real point is to tell you about an element of the technical review opinion that's going to require additional work on the part of the applicant in order to meet one of the conditions that's set forth rather clearly by the Technical Review Committee. And if I'm allowed, I'll just point it to the second page of the Technical Review Committee report, and it says,
Hold on a second. Should we allow him to continue?
So long as there's no introduction of testimony of a third party that's not here or an exhibit that contains an opinion related to that same expert.
there won't be.
Thank you.
I'm just referring to an official document that you have, which is the written decision by the Technical Review Committee. And it requires 5 things to happen, okay? Many of them are not relevant at this point in time, but there is one that was brought up as a result of Mr. Kane's concern about whether or not there is or isn't enough developable land to make the 30,000 square foot requirement for both lots. And the Technical Review Committee, at the insistence of Mr. Kane, indicated that there should be a condition placed on that. And that's number 3, which says the applicant shall seek applicable review of the application by the Coastal Resource Management Council, necessary to confirm the identification of the coastal features of the subject property. We've done that, but CRMC is fully aware and able to come and confirm what we say is the coastal feature, and has, by the way, the final decision on that. And furthermore, we have to apply to CRMC and seek to identify all directly associated contiguous areas which are necessary to preserve the integrity of the features. And that leads me up to why I went through all of this, to tell you that we don't have that information. We're going to try to work with CRMC to find out if CRMC has a process to determine at a location on a piece of property if there are associated contiguous areas necessary to preserve the integrity of the feature. We don't think we're going to be able to get that from CRMC, but the condition number 3 says it's incumbent upon us to do that. So we will attempt to find out the details and bring about a resolution of that issue as best as we can. But we don't know if we will be able to do so in time for this hearing, and that's what I was going to indicate to you. So I'm not going to have Mr. Rabideau here to talk about this issue, and quite frankly, I just want to make sure that it's my position, clearly stated on the record, that this issue is not an issue of concern for the planning board. This is a zoning issue. It's not a planning board regulation. It's not found in the comp plan, any language of this sort. This is found in your developable land definition in the zoning ordinance. This is how you calculate developable land. So it is the responsibility of Mr. Kane to make that decision, and he's asking for some help from CRMC through the applicant to assist him in that regard. We'll do what we can to do it, but I'm not going to be able to have that answer for him quickly, and I don't think I need to, because of the other conditions under your findings of fact. There's one that I will agree to cannot be done, cannot be met by this applicant, and that is your memo from Mr. Wolanski says you have to make 5 findings of fact. We're prepared to present testimony to you on 4 of those 5 findings. The one that we can't provide you with the adequate information, and we will need to seek relief from the zoning board, is number 2. You're supposed to find on this application that the proposed development is in compliance with the standards and provisions of the town zoning ordinance. On the record, I'll tell you, we can't do that. So we're not going to be able to present any testimony to you, nor do I think you should be required or have the duty of dealing with that issue. That's an issue, if it arises, will have to be dealt with by the zoning board of review. I thank my brother for the opportunity to get to that point, but that's the only reason I reference Mr. Rabideau is he's not going to be here. He's not going to talk about that issue before the planning board. He'll do it at the zoning board level if we get that far. Okay? So with
We
that
understand that.
explanation, again, I restate my opinion that despite the engineering battles that have taken place with runoff and technicalities and whatnot, we've gone through that. We're before you with an advisory opinion from the Technical Review Committee. We're good to go, and we want to go. So I will present the details of our subdivision through our engineer, have her qualified as an expert, and we'll go from there. I also, beyond the engineering end of things, I have Nathan Godfrey, who will also be testifying in support of one of the conditions that findings of fact that you need to make relative to our compliance with the comprehensive community plan. So with that said, I don't know whether Matt wants to have an opening statement himself. I'm more than happy to accommodate him.
We have a question from a member of the planning
Oh,
board.
yes.
So, and our solicitor's going to have to help me with this, because, you know, I'd like to go forward and hear more from both sides. However, as the applicant has stated, they can, in order for us to make a decision here tonight, we need to rule that it, assuming it's a positive recommendation, that they've met the required findings. And they've told us that they can't meet finding number 2. So how can we rule and support it, if we intend on supporting it, if they've testified that they can't meet item 2? Now, I don't deny that you likely will get a decision from CRMC that will help the zoning officer to make that determination. But how can we make a ruling if they're testifying that they can't meet condition number 2? They can testify they can meet 1, 3, 4, and 5, but not 2. How can we go forward? I want to sit here and listen to this, believe me, but I'm struggling with getting past that. How do we go forward?
If the board is of the opinion that the application is somehow deficient in meeting item number 2, then it actually makes your vote, I would think, incredibly easy. If you think that it is not, if the application as submitted and under review right now cannot go forward because it is deficient, then you've answered your own question.
So regardless of how much they can testify, he's testified that they can't meet condition 2. I don't know. I'm struggling with going forward without getting that answer. And frankly, I don't necessarily think, I don't personally need that answer, but in order for me to support this, I think I do need it. I think the board needs the answer for us to move forward.
May I help you with your struggle?
Before we go any further, I'd like to get a sense of the board on this issue.
Well, before you do, I would like to say, you don't have to find that we are in compliance with the zoning ordinance and make a determination. This simply says you have to make a finding of fact that we are not in compliance with the standards of the zoning ordinance. And that's an easy fact, we're not. Traditionally, the protocol has been, you don't stop because of that or any other of the findings. You make a conditional approval and you make the condition, we're not going to let this be final unless you get the zoning relief you need. And that's what this board does constantly.
So I would agree with that we get another bite at the apple, I guess, at final, assuming they go to zoning and get a zoning variance for the area, frontage, whatever they need. But I wish you wouldn't have said that we can't meet condition number 2, because that's what I'm hung up on.
Mr. Chairman?
Art?
Well, I've got something I think a little more serious than number 2. After careful reading of the comprehensive plan, which I helped write, in my opinion, have decided this plan is inconsistent with our comprehensive plan. That's my opinion. And I have stuff to back it up. I'm not just coming out of nowhere. Spent a long time carefully looking at our plan, and what I've decided that I have to do. That's my responsibility.
Can you elaborate on that at all?
I can read what I found, if that's useful.
If you have an opinion, you have an opinion. What I'm saying to you, your opinion is probably less than what it might be after you hear testimony from us as to why we are in compliance with the comp plan. But, I mean, if you've prejudged it, Arthur, I can understand that.
As you know, I spent a lot of time working
Oh, I
on the
know you
comp
did.
plan.
Both of
and
us
I've
did.
been doing this for 2 decades. So what I'd like to say and put on the record, in the land vision statement, it says promoting sound growth and quality development which preserves and protects established neighborhoods. Chapter 9, protection of community character, land use. The town goal underlined is to maintain strong and unique neighborhoods with long-term viability and appeal. And most importantly, in order to achieve this goal, the town should protect residential neighborhoods and promote high-quality and appropriate designs and construction of all land development projects. And I am saying my opinion is this application does not meet that standard.
Well, I would hope that after you have, that opinion reflected again, after we tell you why we think that's not the case, that's what the process is.
What is the next step in your presentation, please?
I want to bring my engineer up. Well, I did ask if Matt wanted to make any comments.
Sure.
I wouldn't want to preclude him from doing that.
Let's move this along.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Matt Lees. I represent Jeremiah and Lorna Schaefer in their capacities as trustees of the Jeremiah Schaefer Trust, which own 553 Tuckerman Avenue, which is adjacent to the Shelton property on the north side. Just a few preliminary matters, some of which Mr. Silva touched on that I wanted to address. And the primary one is that issue of developable land area. Developable land area under your ordinance and regulations is the equivalent of lot size. And right now we don't know what the lot size is for these 2 proposed lots. At the last TRC meeting where the matter was extensively debated, the zoning officer abstained from ruling. And the TRC voted to recommend to this board that the applicants must apply to CRMC to confirm the coastal feature and all directly associated contiguous areas necessary to preserve its integrity. We believe, and we've taken the position, that what that means is the 100-foot CRMC buffer and setback, where no construction can occur, 75-foot buffer, you can't even touch the vegetation. We believe that that area needs to be excluded, the 100-foot buffer and setback, from developable land area. And if you do that, our engineer has done the calculations and he shows that both of these subject lots are less than 30,000 square feet. And we have that evidence with us here tonight. But importantly, we think you need to know that, have a conclusion on that issue before you even proceed on this application. The recommendation from the TRC was not to the zoning officer, it was not to the zoning board, it was to this board that the applicant go to CRMC and get a ruling on this issue. Why do you need to know it? Your regulations require you to make a finding that the proposed development, as we discussed, is in compliance with the zoning ordinance. It also requires you to address the issue of high quality and appropriate design. Even your checklist for subdivision applications requires the lot size to be stated. We don't know what it is right now. What variances are going to be required? I mean, normally if you refer it to the zoning board with a conditional approval, you at least know what the variances are that you're going to be, that's going to have to come back with. What is the resulting density that you're approving? How does all this relate to the comprehensive plan? If you don't know the lot size of the lot you're creating, you can't possibly make a ruling on many of the provisions of the comprehensive plan, some of which Mr. Weber just recited. I submitted a letter on September 4th, 2018. Some case has been going on a while, but it basically contains our position on these things. It also contains our position regarding the exclusion of the VE zone, which we believe is another area that needs to be excluded, and the public utility
easement that also needs to be excluded, and I assume that September 4th letter is still in your file, but I have another copy of it if it's needed. That letter also addresses another issue which was debated quite a bit earlier on in this case, and that is the issue of whether this should really be treated as a major subdivision and not a minor subdivision. There is precedent for doing that. Namely, the precedent was an attempted subdivision of my client's property by a prior owner, the O'Regans. That subdivision was denied 6-0. It was a subdivision of a larger lot, which was going to be very similar to what's being proposed here with no frontage on one of the lots. And at that time, the planner, and we submitted actually the minutes with our September 4th letter, the planner concluded that this is a major subdivision because you can't meet the zoning ordinance requirements. Therefore, you need waivers. And since you need waivers from the planning board, it can't be a minor subdivision, certainly not administrative. That makes it a major subdivision. As such, you have all sorts of procedural protections and different things that are required. So that position is also stated in our letter. There was some back and forth on that issue. The last conclusion from the conflict solicitor was in a memo dated December 4th, 2018, in which she concluded that no, we think we can do it as a minor, which is why we're here today. But I just wanted to make that point again for the record, that we still are of that opinion. A few other things that were mentioned, Mr. Silva mentioned, I just wanted to address. The 10,000 square feet that was added that results in the plan that you see now was a result of this subdivision being denied last year by the planning board. And so they went back and they went to the neighbor and they invoked as far as I can tell, they invoked a 30-year-old agreement which required the neighbor, Ms. Traherne Thomas, to give them 10,000 square feet in furtherance of a subdivision, and she would then get paid half the purchase price of the new lot. So the subdivision is back with a new application after having been denied. The TRC there were several TRC meetings, and the reason for that is this area has had major flooding problems. It's in what they call a catchment area, which basically drains the entire Walcott-Tuckerman area into a funnel that goes right across my client's lot and the Shelton lot. And the town has tried to address that. They have put in a large drain, which many of you saw on that day. But we don't think that the problem is totally solved. And the lots are dramatically sloping. As you all saw out there, they're wet. There are drains running all over the place, emitting water. And so my client is concerned that if a large house, and this is, when you look at the living area of what they're proposing, it could be 9,000 square feet or more, is propped on top of that hill, it's going to result in even worse water runoff problems. So that's what motivated us to really go to the TRC and try to make sure that these issues were addressed. And one of the reasons I should say that there were so many TRC meetings is that as we would come up to each TRC meeting, we would receive, and the TRC and the town consulting engineer would receive completely new plans with a new design, and nobody had time to really review them before the next TRC meeting, so it would be continued so there would be an opportunity to review. The end result, we're not totally satisfied with the end result. I shouldn't say we're not totally satisfied, we're not satisfied at all with the end result. And we have an engineer here to address further the stormwater runoff issues. Those are my main points. I have three witnesses, preliminary points anyway. I have three witnesses here tonight. Dr. Igor Runge, who is my client's engineer, who's prepared to testify about developable land. He's also prepared to testify regarding the details of the plan that has come out of the TRC that we think the planning board members should know about, and also to testify about ongoing drainage concerns. We also have a real estate expert, Mr. Bill Coyle, who is going to could testify about the character of the neighborhood and how out of character with the neighborhood this proposal is. And he and my client can talk about the precedent argument. In fact, it's the correct precedent. Mr. Silva mentioned that you've done this before, but the correct precedent in this area, and I'm not aware of any of this being done before in this area, this type of subdivision, but the correct precedent in this area is the O'Regan application, which was denied 6-0. That's the correct precedent. And Mr. Coyle will also, obviously, will testify about inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. And then my client would like to make a statement about the reason that he's objecting to this. And so we're prepared to present all that evidence, but you have the preliminary issue, which I think is a substantial one, of how can you address this if you don't know the lot size. We think they need to go to CRMC and address this at CRMC. They're going to need an assent anyway because they're developing a swale system within 200 feet of the coastal feature, which is CRMC jurisdiction, and they're creating a point source discharge by way of this runoff stream directly into toward Type 1 waters of the bay there. So they'll need to get an assent anyway, and we think they need to go there and address this issue of lot size, developable land area.
Thank you. Can I get a ruling, please? Did, in fact, the TRC make the proposal to the zoning official to go to see coastal resources? Was that recommendation to the planning board rather than the zoning board?
The memo that you have before you from Mr. Wolanski is directed to the planning board members, and that recommendation includes the issue
The
of
zoning official
the
going to
CRMC.
CRM for their ruling?
Correct.
Okay, so before we go any further, I'd like to get a sense of the planning board on this issue.
So I'll comment. So my question original, I still have an issue with the fact that, Bob, you said you can't comply. That being said, and based on what the applicant, the opposition says, I think that condition number 3 by the technical review committee, the one we just talked about, would apply to finding number 2, if you will. It would, in my eyes, satisfy that. I'm okay with that. But that being said, we need CRMC input here. Like you just said, Paul, condition number 3 is to the planning board, and right in the memo, in the condition, it's written, necessary to confirm the identification of coastal features, which will affect the lot area. I think, in order to be fair, I need to see what the lot area ruling is from the zoning officer. And let's apply that. Once that's said and done, then if the plan needs to be adjusted, so be it. But then we can come back and hear the rest of this testimony. But I think we need to see where that lot is. I agree. I think based on both sides tonight, I think I would suggest we get that answer.
Okay.
That's how I feel.
BJ?
I agree completely. We need to address the lot size, the CRMC, and when we were there on the sidewalk, we certainly had an opportunity to view why it would be needed. And I think that the inconsistencies need to be brought to the fore and settled. That's my feeling.
All right.
I've got to go a little further because I guess I get confused easily. The existing lot you want to build on, before anything else happens with other property and acreage and square footage, how big is that?
I think it's probably close.
What's parcel 1? No, not parcel 2, not the whole thing.
Yeah, parcel 1.
Up by the street.
Yeah,
How
it's
big?
almost 60,000. It's about 56,000 square feet.
No, I'm talking about parcel 1.
Oh, where the house is going to go?
Yes.
Lynn has her
See, what I'm
calculation.
confused about is why would you transfer 10,000 square feet of really non-contiguous property from another lot to parcel 1? It doesn't make any sense to me. How do you do that? And what does it mean?
Well, it goes back historically to an agreement that was in existence with Virginia Trahan Thomas, saying that she would make that area available to assist the Shelton property to be subdivided. She owned everything at one point.
So I guess let me re-ask the question.
Yeah.
Is the addition of that 10,000 square feet, which I find totally useless and ambiguous, needed to get to 30,000 square feet for a building lot?
It helps, yeah.
Well, could you define help?
Well, if you agree with the coastal feature flagging, and the area we say is necessary for the 30,002 lots, that 10,000 is necessary for us to make 30,000 square feet of developable land in both lots. So it's necessary for this subdivision.
You get credit for the land, but it's basically useless for the building footprint. So how does it count? That strip really is not going to have any impact on what's put on that property whatsoever. It's just an added piece of property that has no impact on the existing building lot.
But Art, let me ask you,
It has access to the shore.
it gets them to the number they need to be at, and like he said, if the CRMC rules in, let's say, in their favor, and they're 10,000, which they can do legally because they have the agreement to show, and then they can show by our rules and regs, not so much our rules and regs, it's the zoning, I believe, that allows them to take that piece and count it as part of of that lot. They can do that by the way the existing laws are written, but the key is CRMC.
All right.
And that was done, by the way, and I have to correct a misstatement by Mr. Lees. The original attempt by the O'Regans to subdivide his client's property now, that was done years ago when CRMC rules and regulations were differently. And his reference to the fact that the original application solely on Mr. Sheldon's lot was denied by this board, that's not the case. We
Well,
decided
that
to...
makes me more interested in understanding what CRMC is going to say.
Yeah, I understand.
John?
Two points. First, I'm in agreement with Mr. Weber regarding this project. Secondly, I'm not willing to take a leap of faith with this coastal management, not knowing these numbers.
I'm sorry, could you...
I'm not willing to take a leap of faith without knowing the report from the coastal management. I'm not ready to go and predict into the future. I want to see the hard numbers in front of me.
Joe, do you have any
I
comments?
mean, it seems like we're playing mental hocus pocus here. Let's get down to the facts with the numbers and proceed from there.
Well, I didn't mean to characterize the zoning issue in the mind of Mr. Nash that we can't meet the zoning. That's a little bit too harsh. We can meet the zoning provided we get relief from zoning. But at this moment, we can't meet the zoning. And the protocol and the procedure allows us to defer that until a later time. Now, if the board is uncomfortable in allowing me to do that and wants to address the requirement that the applicant seek applicable review of the CRMC, it's perfectly up to the board to say, go do that first before we have a hearing.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Can I get Mr. Pirik to comment?
Yes, I have a consistent concern about the coastal resource issue that's been raised by my other board members. Sufficient that I feel like I need more information to move forward.
Mike, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I generally agree with that as well.
I agree with it also.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that the sense of the board is clearly that we need that decision before we can do anything.
Okay. I will say this at this juncture, though. I don't want to misrepresent mine or my client's abilities to come back with a neatly wrapped answer for you, because it's a little complicated. There's a difference between finding the area next to a coastal feature, cliff rock, defining that, or going to CRMC and saying, what's your jurisdiction and what's a setback? Two different items. I'm sure that CRMC, when asked, what's the setback from the coastal feature, will tell you it's 100 feet. Okay?
Well,
but that doesn't answer Mr. Kane's question.
And we need to hear from Mr. Kane. That's the bottom line.
I'm going to suggest to you that CRMC doesn't have in its rules and regulations any language that comes anywhere near what your ordinance has to include the area associated with and necessary to maintain the feature's integrity. So I don't know, I can come back with anything that will be helpful for you, but I'll do it.
Thank you.
Just quickly, for the record, I mean, we do think that the CRMC, when they established the buffer and setback, that is the area that's necessary to preserve the integrity of the coastal feature. And I think that's why Mr. Kane sent it there, but.
Let's not debate it now. We need to get a recommendation from Mr. Kane.
Two different things.
And if I may, in terms of timing, I know that we're beyond the time, or the time has been extended month to month for a decision on this matter, so I assume Mr. Silva, if it's going to be continued, would agree to the continuance.
If I don't, we just all go home.
Well, you without a positive vote, I think.
No, it goes without saying that whatever extension from the rules that the board lives with, that you have to make a decision within so many days, that obviously will be waived by me in light of the board's indication that it wants more information on the coastal feature.
Do we have any idea when that ruling from CRMC is coming in?
All I can tell you is we'll start immediately to contact Mr. Rabideau. I don't think there's a procedure specifically to identify that kind of area, but
So
I
will you-
suspect it might be a request.
Will you
for,
request a continuance to the next regular meeting, June 12th?
I would think, yeah.
Are you making that request?
Yeah.
Okay. May I have a motion to continue this item to the June 12th meeting?
So I would move, but yes, I would.
We'll have discussion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there discussion?
Yes. So I'm still not clear what, I think I'm clear with what we're asking for, but it sounds like you two are not clear on what we're looking for. I would like the zoning officer to get a correspondence from CRMC to rule on what they believe is let's get them to look at this particular plan, obviously, and give us a ruling on how they feel that developable area is consistent with the CRMC regulations, or not.
Developable land is not a requirement of CRMC regulations. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Understood, but
That's a
And you may be
decision,
right,
that's
but
a
we need to
decision
hear-
that's up
we
to
need
the
to hear
zoning
from
officer,
the building
period.
inspector.
okay, so let that fall back onto the zoning officer. That's what he does, and let's let him give us that ruling. And then, if it goes in your favor, so be it. You have an appeal. If it goes the other way, then we may not be here.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
We
at
need
least
to hear
get
from Mr. Kane.
the next step.
You have to, now, Mr. Kane might not want to get involved in what CRMC deliberates, but I will certainly keep him and Matt totally informed as to what we're doing.
Okay, before I call for the vote, is it okay to receive comments from the public?
I can't think of any reason why not.
Yeah. I would like to hear some comments from the public if anyone wishes to speak.
I have a question from Solicitor first, Paul.
Okay.
Before we go there. So
I would put on the record my objection because the public is going to start to speak about something that hasn't heard of yet.
Point noted. Point noted.
So without forcing Jack Kane to make a ruling, can we compel him to correspond with us and give us some better direction? Because that's really what we need here. I don't want to put him on the spot, but in effect I do, because we need to move forward. So can we emphasize that to him? And even if he frankly needs to appear here, I hate to do that to him, but it makes it easier, I think, for all of us, because frankly, much of my support or not for this is hinging on what he's going to say. And I think it's more effective in this setting than in a memo. So can we strongly emphasize, work with us? Jack, if you're going to hear this, please work with us on this.
Well,
Yes.
we need his recommendation.
Yeah.
I think you make a good point, Counsel. We'll hold off on public hearing until we have the recommendation from the building inspector.
That's fair. That's fair.
Michael?
I just have a question. Like the Just wondering if there's still more expert witnesses around here that we should hear before we,
Well, I think we need to get this recommendation before we go any further.
okay, well, yeah, okay, because there's a lot of people here that might have
Hate to do that.
further information that,
But I think he's right.
that should be heard too before. That might not be the only issue that would postpone a meeting. There might be some other issues too that could postpone it as well.
There may not be any reason to hear that testimony if the rules...
I would just like to thank the people who came, and hopefully we'll see you back here again. But thank you very much for listening and hearing what the concerns are.
Yeah, BJ makes a good point. I apologize for not receiving your comments tonight, but I think it's best to follow the procedure where we get the recommendation before we go any further. So I thank you for coming, and I appreciate your patience on this. So we have a motion to continue this to the June 12th meeting.
So moved.
No, we have the motion and it's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This item is continued to the June 12th meeting. The next item on the agenda is item 5F, request of the Zoning Board of Review for review and recommendations on an application of Leon Pantaleos for a special use permit to construct an accessory ground-mounted solar photovoltaic system in Zone 1 of the Watershed Protection District.
Mr. Chairman, I have to recuse myself on this.
Yeah, on property located at 560 Aquidneck Avenue, Assessors Plat 114, Lot 115. Mr. Chumo has recused himself.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name's
Please.
Leon Pantaleos. I'm the property owner.
Good evening.
Could you take that conversation outside, please? We're still conducting business here.
Thank you, Paul.
Good evening.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Okay, proceed.
Good evening. Name is Edmund DeTroya, the President of Renewable Energy Services.
I can't hear you. Put the mic in front of you.
Name is Edmund DeTroya, here representing Renewable Energy Services and representing my client, Leon. We'd like to, as you can see from the Planning Department and the letter that was sent out, we have an application to extend an existing ground mount array at Leon's address here at 560 Aquidneck Avenue. I believe he's got a 20 kW system that's in place that was built, what, about 7 years ago? And we like to extend that to, it's another 25 kW system to also do the heating supply, that electric cars, et cetera, et cetera. It's noted in the letter here from your town planner that the ground surface beneath the panels will remain pervious. And there's no additional runoff. Relatively simple request. Anything else to say? It's relatively.
Any other comments?
I'll tell you, it's it's really that simple. We want to extend it. There's an existing solar array. We want to extend it. It's in this stissing area, but there's no additional water runoff. It has really zero impact on what's going on over there.
Comments from the board? BJ?
How close to Morrison Avenue is this? Is this near Morrison? I'm trying to figure out where exactly it is.
Yeah, Morrison Avenue is across Aquidneck Avenue, so it's probably, let's say maybe 200 feet.
Okay, it's after Polo.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
just trying to get it located.
Okay.
I got it.
Michael?
So the existing solar array, is that mounted on a structure, on a house?
No, the existing solar array is it's a ground mount system. Just ask for an extension to that system.
How many panels are there?
Currently, there's 84 panels.
Okay.
How large is the lot?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
How large is the lot?
Lot is 3.51 acres.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the planning board?
Are there any drawings or any
Oh, yeah.
submitted? Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't in my packet either for some reason. I missed it.
Yeah.
Well,
I do have a
I
couple
think we
extra
had
copies
them
for everybody.
Oh, last
You
time.
like them?
Last meeting we had.
Okay, I bet.
Okay.
You see that, Chuck, Matt? I mean, like, you see where the
Yeah, this is the new area. That's the existing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is all an empty lot here, correct?
That's just all, I think it's just all vegetation. It comes right around. Vegetation comes from here, all the way up and through here. It's probably, I don't say it's probably an acre or so, just all vegetation.
Mike? Any other comments from members of the board? You're in zone 1 because of the soil, not because of wetlands, so I'm fine with this. We have a motion for a favorable recommendation.
May I also note that there are 2 recommended conditions of approval, that the builder comply with the Stormwater Management Ordinance, Chapter 153, and Construction Site Runoff 151, and the board may also consider limiting the use of lawn chemicals, fertilizers, and other chemicals because of the watershed protection district.
I'll move that approval with those conditions that the applicant has met the standards as set forth in the planner's memo dated April 1.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next item is the status report of the planning board items. I assume you've all read those, and as you can see, we're making progress on a lot of things. I see we've lost our solicitor.
If we would like him back, I can...
I'd love to call him and say, Pete, get back here. No. He's probably watching at home.
He said
Pete, stay home.
he'd be here in 5 minutes if we would like him back.
Stay home, we don't need you. I didn't mean that respectfully.
I would like to request that you send a request to the town solicitor for all of the items that we're waiting for him on. I mean, you know, he's, number 9, we're waiting for him.
Why don't I, do you want me to text
I believe number 13, we're waiting for him. So if we could do something to prod the solicitor to expedite these, that would be appreciated. Let me know when you're back with us.
He said he'd be here in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. So in the meantime, we can cover these other items. Nothing new on BRAC, I assume?
I have no update on
Yeah. Anything further on the rural village district?
Yes, both John Nunes and Chris Bichot have asked for some more time to go through the tables they want.
How much more time?
They didn't say exactly.
They've been at it for quite a while now.
Yeah.
We need to get.
Well, they claim they run a business, they don't really have a lot of free time, so, but I can make a little personal visit to
Thank you.
hurry it up.
Thank you. Use Table Subcommittee.
Sure. So, yeah, just to back up for a sec, I like our discussion at our last use table subcommittee that they're working on uses that they don't want there in the district. And I like that approach. I think that is effective. And that's kind of what we're doing with the use table. We've finished our review of the uses that we feel are appropriate within the Atlantic Beach District, and we'll report on that at the next meeting. But we are going to meet one more time to finalize some of the notes that Ron took and Rita took and kind of get a better document together so we can discuss it further at the next meeting.
So does that mean at the next meeting, the planning department will combine the reports from the two subcommittees for discussion?
I think that was the plan. That's what we talked about the other day.
That's what we talked about, yes.
I believe that's what we talked about the other day after you left, yes.
So you're going to meet one final time and then submit something to the plan, and then the planning department can put them together with what the other subcommittee did and bring forth something for the June 12th meeting.
Right, but to be clear, it's the final meeting for the Atlantic Beach District. I'd like to maintain the use table subcommittee and continue our work on the rest of the items, not necessarily as quickly as we did, but we need to continue on that. So it's not the final meeting, we're still going to continue on the rest of the uses in the use table.
Well, there's also something else that's waiting for you to finish this job. It's in this.
It's limited business. It started with limited business.
Besides that, in addition to that. Just give me a minute here.
Yeah, that's fine, Paul. Yeah, number 4. Use table regarding LB. And the F's combined.
Yeah, no, I know that, but there's something else.
Okay.
No, I can't see it now.
So I guess my point was, is you said final meeting, not our final meeting, but this task is going to be the final meeting for this task, but we have additional tasks that we're working on.
Yes, that's true. That's true. The tree commission.
Oh, the tree commission, I'd like to give kudos to Alan Kirby. I have here a valley tree update of about 11 beds of trees that Alan went to and examined all the trees, made comments on them, made positive recommendations, and he has checked them all because this is a big investment. There's going to be about 300 trees there, so he's done a wonderful job. And Alan does this, I don't believe he's being paid for any of this, but he's done a lot of work for the town, for the commission.
Thank you. Open space and fields.
So this was the committee that I gave to Mike.
Yeah.
You didn't know that, Mike. You didn't show up, so we put you on a committee.
Mike has been notified.
Okay.
Anything to report?
Well, I think I saw some plans. Is this the open fields there, at the old drive-in? At the drive-in?
They meet at the fire station, and I think they just had a meeting last week. It's the first.
Okay.
We need to get you plugged into Mason Hawes or Tom Welch. Yeah, we should probably get him connected to that. Rita, can we do that? Can you connect him with the chair? Yeah. Or one of Coogan. Nick Coogan, I believe, is also the vice chair of that. So, but it's really Mason Hawes, I believe.
I'm not sure if he's still chair.
I think he is. Okay. I think he is. Will Cronin would be a good resource too, because Will's shown up at those. That's probably best.
Okay. Conservation Commission?
No update at this time, but I know, Rita, was I approved by the town council to be the
I don't know.
Conservation Commission representative?
I don't know.
I'm good to go, so.
Are you connected with Gary, the chair of the Conservation
No,
Commission?
I'll reach out to him tomorrow.
I think you can start going to the meetings just to get up to speed.
Oh, okay.
And then when it's, until you are approved, you're not a voting member. Once you're approved, you will be a voting member.
All right.
Okay?
Should I follow up with Ron on that tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shoot him an email.
Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission, Art?
Okay, the May 13th, there's going to be a conference at Salve to talk about the West Side Master Plan and kind of outline the approach to that. I've also suggested 2 other projects I think would be useful for their analysis. One is on sea level rise, and also a dispassionate analysis of regionalization pros and cons.
And you can see the upcoming meetings we have, the special meeting on June 5th on the Brennan subdivision, and then our regular meeting on June 12th. Those are the 2 meetings we have scheduled right now.
That's our next meeting. Yeah, okay, that's good.
By the way, Rita, on the project updates list, number 9 is another one that we're waiting for the town solicitor.
Do you want to review which ones right now, number 9?
Number 9.
Are there other, what are the other ones?
Are you all set with that?
What are the other ones besides number 9? That you're waiting for the solicitor?
Now you're gonna...
Oh,
Number 13. Number 13.
Number 13, number 14.
And number 9. I guess that was it.
Okay.
13 and 9. Okay? We have a motion for, well, is there anything else to come before the board?
Could I make a suggestion?
Of course.
Yes, my suggestion is that over a period of time, we accumulate a lot of clips and gadgets like this. And it may be an idea, that's what I've done. I have a bag full of them to bring over
I use
to
them.
the town planner. It's just a suggestion to, the thrifty
Paper
side
clips.
of me. So that's my
I thought that was the
suggestion.
fringe benefit of being on the board. You get free paper clips.
Well, if you don't use them, I suggest you return them rather than throw them away.
Yes, that's,
Good call.
Anything else to come
Jay.
before the board? Michael?
Chairman, I understand there's some work being done by the beach commission, for some improvements in the parking lot and maybe the traffic pattern in those areas and things like that. Is that something the planning board would is interested in?
Well, we're not involved with the beach commission.
But I do attend the meetings because I work at the Second Beach.
Well, you're welcome to make a report on it if you wish.
I'll be happy to. We have a lot of things planned.
Please proceed. You can do it right now.
Oh, well, as you know, Craig Schmidt was appointed the new beach director last year, retired Navy commander. He's made some terrific improvements, including the hiring of staff. We now actually interview the people there instead of with a friend of mine, because I always felt it was a summer jobs program. And I told certain members of the town council we're running a multi-million-dollar business here. And the jobs are not, we've eliminated, he's a friend of mine type of thing. So the quality of candidates are good. We're talking about a PA system now that will eventually reach the entire length of the beach because of a liability situation in case there's an emergency and we can't communicate with the patrons along the beach. It's rather expensive and it would open the town up for tremendous liability if something like a missing child, a drowned person, a shooting incident. we're working on that.
It was going to go to the point and also the third beach, right?
That's correct. That's correct. It's expensive, but as I explained to the Beach Commission, I said, if something of that tragedy happened, and they found out that we had no proper way of communicating up and down the beach instantaneously, the town would be open for tremendous liability. Because
Are you a member of the commission?
No, I attended,
You just
but I'm
attend.
one of the managers, part-time, I work there part-time to keep me occupied in the
How
summertime.
much does it cost, John?
Well, and it's over $100,000.
Oh, is
And
that
seeing
right?
that we are the second largest revenue producer besides property taxes for the town council, they like to use that money for other projects. But we did, I think it was $2.1 million this year in revenue, most of it in cash.
A lot of sunny weekends.
What's that, John?
A lot of sunny weekends.
Oh, we had a tremendous, and what's happening now, is we are becoming a destination beach for people in Massachusetts. As I explained to them, if you live anywhere near Bridgewater, Massachusetts, you can be sitting here in an hour. You can take, and we see that all the time.
As long as they're not in my
Thursday,
spot.
What?
As long as they're not
No,
in my
we got
spot.
your spot, I know where your spot is. But we're as busy on Thursdays on a nice day as we are on weekends. It's absolute pandemonium down there. So last year we had record revenues with less payroll. Our accounting system was dead on, and the quality of our employees is raised substantially from what we would normally get. We had about 80% of the people come back, and and the new employees we hired, they had to go before a panel of 4 people and interview them again, and they're mostly young kids. And we let them know, first off, this is a business. Maybe a summer jobs to you. This is a business for us. We raise revenue for the town. And if you're not willing to participate in what we want, don't bother applying.
Oh, good
That's
for
what I used to
you.
tell my employees. Don't even want the program, get out.
If you don't put more people in, there's going to be a shooting.
All right.
What's that?
Watch it now.
Let's get back.
More a shooting.
Let-
So anyway, that's what's
Let's
going
get
on.
back to planning board things.
We're talking
Okay.
about paving the parking lot in time, but again, the town council uses our revenue for other projects,
Thank you.
which is their want, they can do that.
Now may I have a motion for adjournment?
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
So